Looking back at Amphibia again, today we're looking at Hopluck and Stakeout. Two episodes that I had kind of forgotten about, though once I got into Stakeout in particular, I did remember it. Because I actually really like that one. Like, both of these are solid, don't get me wrong, but I liked that one a lot, very genuinely. But, of course, talking about them in order, Hopluck I think was the weaker of the two, though I did like how it established some stuff, like the mayor and Toadie were in here, for example, and we got just little snippets of their personalities. And there was some good humor in here. The plot of the episode being that it's time for the town's annual potluck where each dish is judged, and the losers, which is usually the planters, get put in the shame cage and elevated for the rest of the evening while people throw gunk at them, which is utterly ridiculous, but in keeping with the kind of culture you see in this show's world. And at the end of the day, it's ultimately harmless, so it's whatever. And seeing that Hop Pop is going to be cooking something from an old recipe book, one that he's hung on to out of tradition, the kids are bummed out, and Anne insists that they should instead make something more modern, and suggests pizza, because technically speaking, all of the components for a pizza do exist in Amphibia. It just so happens that they're a little harder to get than they are back home, and this leads to some pretty funny stuff, like not asking where the cheese came from, and Sprig being sold into an arranged marriage, which is pretty funny, only because we know that it doesn't amount to anything down the line. Like, otherwise it would be a little weird in a show with such strong continuity. But in context, it's funny. But it all culminates in them going after tomatoes, which in Amphibia are giant monster plants, like a rooted hydra that will just straight up eat you. And it straight up eats them. But in the end, they recognize that maybe there should be a compromise between the two ways of thinking. Yeah, the modern way of thinking, trying to rush ahead with that, put them in this situation. Maybe Anne should be a little more thoughtful before she rushes ahead with something like that. But in the end, they do use part of the tomato in their dish, so Hop Pop admits that a compromise is probably the best way to go too. But in the end, it's information from that book of old traditional stuff that tells them that they can eat their way out of the tomato plant. And so they do. They lose all of the ingredients that they gathered aside from the tomato, but they live another day. And their dish, a compromise between the two ways of thinking, is the best dish that the planters have ever brought. They still lose, but it was better than anything they'd ever done before. Showing how much these two, I want to say groups, how much Anne and this group of people complement each other in a positive way, and how much potential they have to help each other in their growth. And in a season where the episodes are mostly not literally filler, this show doesn't actually have actual filler, but where they can be slotted in basically anywhere, it's remarkable that the next episode kind of follows up from that, thematically speaking. Because at the end of Hopluck, as the other planters are being put in the shame cage, Anne asks if she can go in with them, effectively asking if she can be part of their family, since it's the losing family that gets put in the shame cage. And they let her in without hesitation. And in the next one, in Stakeout, when Anne and Hop Pop keep grinding against each other, her modern way of thinking and his old-fashioned way of thinking coming in conflict in mostly harmless ways where you can tell there's no real animosity there, right? They're just competing with each other because they're both very competitive people. They're very similar people. When that keeps happening, Sprig decides he has to enact a zany scheme to get them to get along better so that he can save their family from having a falling out. Already, the show is acknowledging that Anne is part of their family. That is a direct follow-up from the denouement of the previous episode. And so he enacts his zany scheme, stealing some of the corn from the farm, forcing Anne and Hop Pop to stake out the farm to try to catch the corn thief. Hence the title. And between the two of them having to sit there all night together, and the two of them accidentally drugging each other into having hallucinations by giving each other drinks, trying to one-up each other. They give each other's extreme drinks, and their body chemistry just isn't compatible with them. So they start having a shared hallucination of having magical anime powers, and of Sprig being a corn-based monster instead of himself, and they almost kill him. Again, pretty macabre, but hilarious, because he didn't die. He's fine. He was a little traumatized by the end, clearly, but he was fine. But between all of that, the two of them do come to understand each other better and recognize that despite their different ways of thinking, they're both the kind of people that they're happy to be around, that they're happy to have in their lives. And it takes basically the whole show for them to really compromise on this different ways of thinking of theirs. But they are such similar people, and they do have such similar ways of thinking, that they're almost the two characters who understand each other the best this early on in the show. And I absolutely adored how in the hallucination, Anne's magical anime powers were that she had glowy hair and could shoot Kamehameha beams out of her hands. It was extremely heavy foreshadowing for what's to come. And looking back, I absolutely adored it, because that's the part of the episode that I didn't remember going into it once I realized what episode it was. The rest of it I remembered a lot, though, as the episode was going on. The interactions between Hop Pop and Anne are a highlight, I think, of the first season, as far as I can recall it. The episode doesn't come right out and tell us, hey, these characters are very similar to each other. This is the kind of person Anne's going to be when she's Hop Pop's relative age. Do these frogs age at the same rate as humans? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But you get that sense from watching them together. And the rest of the series just continues to reinforce that going forward. This is where their really cool familial relationship starts. And if you haven't gone back to rewatch it recently, I definitely think you should. Stakeout is a true gem. And Polly's interactions with Sprig in this episode are also really solid, where she keeps being the cautious one and telling him this is a stupid plan. It feels out of character, but it's not really, because Polly is not so reckless that she'll do things that probably won't actually have any noticeable payoff and will only end up harming her in the end. And she recognizes that's what Sprig is doing. Even though his plan technically works, it doesn't either. It was just really good. Really good character stuff without having to sit down and tell us what that character stuff was supposed to be. In the end, though, these are two excellent episodes. And I don't think you can just slot them in anywhere. I think like Stakeout has to go after Hop Luck. It has to. In fact, I'd argue that any episode where Anne considers herself part of the Planters family has to go after Hop Luck. Which is pretty cool for these early episodes. It's something I didn't catch the first time through. As per usual, though, guys, what did you think of these two episodes of Amphibia, if you have seen them? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who think you enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.